Insane in the Membrane.
Hello and welcome to another edition of your favourite podcast, Insane in the Membrane, with me, Rich Wilson. And this week I'm joined by the brilliant human being, David Ian. Hello.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you? You just telling me you got just getting over tonsillitis. Is that right?
I am. Yeah, that's my punishment for it being Pride Month.
Really? You think this? You can't have it all. You can't celebrate.
You can't. No, it's too much celebrating. That's what it is.
I haven't had tonsillitis in years. Very much the childhood thing.
I know. I was at the GP and he said I'd got tonsillitis, and I was like, I didn't even know that adults could get tonsillitis. So, but apparently we can.
That was the GP saying that.
Yeah.
Good for him. Good for him. How was your Pride Month been? Have you had fun?
Yeah, it's been busy so far, actually. So Pride in London actually happens at the end of the end of the month. So it happens on the 1st of July. So we've got that to look forward to. But we kicked off the month with a massive festival in London called Mighty Hoopla, which I'm pretty confident is where I got run down enough. Yeah, you know it. So it's like 30,000 people in Brockwell Park in South London for 2 days, just dancing to lots of 90s pop and celebrating being gay. So yeah, so I think that's probably where I got run down enough to get tonsillitis, if I'm honest. But obviously, as a queer comedian and running the Queer Comedy Club, June is a fairly busy month. So yeah, it's been a bit insane so far, but it's good. We're halfway through and I'm loving it.
Excellent. There's a few people I know that went to Mighty Hoopla, and they've come away with tonsillitis, but it's taken them a while to recover. They did some very pretty hardcore celebrating, and
I like to think of it as long hoopla. That's what I always think. Like, 2 weeks afterwards, you're probably still feeling a bit rough, and it's longer the older you are. So
yes, yeah. You got long hoopla.
Afraid so.
What I find amazing about a lot of people still don't understand why we have Pride Month, why we have Pride at all, and it blows my mind when I still see it. I'm like, you surely got enough shit last time to investigate as to why we have Pride. You're still doing this it's like when straight Pride, that bullshit, and you're like, okay, all right.
But isn't that the problem? Because they won't do the research themselves, you see, so they can't be bothered to actually find anything out. They want it all fed to them, and then they don't want to listen when you tell them anyway. I don't tend to engage in any conversations that start with, we don't have a straight pride, because that would be every day of the year.
It's fucking boring if we had straight pride. Do you imagine what that would be?
Well,
what would it be?
I'm not saying that straight people are boring, but
listen, for the first time ever, I can say this. Speaking as a straight white man, that's the last festival I want to go to.
Well, yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it would be very fun. But yeah, I think Pride is probably more important this year than ever before. I mean, particularly when around the world you've got things like the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida, and all the stuff that's going on over there, which what happens over there often makes its way over here. And the Don't Say Gay bill was basically Section 28, which was my entire childhood at school.
Yes.
So for anybody that thinks that we don't need something like Pride, then I think they're probably just not paying enough attention, would be what I would think.
That's exactly it. It still blows my mind. What really blows my mind is that the people that are trying to bring in these laws and trying to regulate people's lives, they always get outed in the end. And it turns out that they were having chemsex parties in the basement of the church.
Yeah.
And you go, why can't you just accept and just embrace who you are? What is wrong with you? It's
funny, isn't it, that it's the unwillingness to accept something within yourself that then means that you need to force that on everybody else. Whereas if you just get to know who you are and give yourself the acceptance that you want from the rest of the world, then you're just a much better person, which is better for the world around you. It's so weird when they're trying to control everybody else's life choices that don't affect them in any way. It's very sad.
And they're doing that with people who are gay and women's rights, and we were talking earlier on another podcast, and there's the woman that got put in prison for aborting her child, and you're going, fuck's sake, is this where we're at now? This is where we're at again.
In 2023, you wouldn't believe it, would you?
No.
But that's the thing. That's the thing with
now.
social progress. It's not a given, and just because we've got these things now doesn't mean that they're here to stay. I remember having this really interesting conversation with my dad about privilege, and privilege being that you've never had to be in a room or in an environment where a part of your existence is up for debate, whether that's like your right to get married or to love who you want or to have control of your body. And if you've never been in that position, I think it's really easy to just think that, oh, well, these are the rules that are here and this is how everything is. But if you have been in the room while your rights have been debated or the rights of people you love have been debated, then I think it's worth keeping in mind that just because you've won it now doesn't mean it's always going to be there, and you have to fight to make sure that it stays and that further progress is made, and that these things aren't just a given, basically.
That is such a great point, because I'm just not aware. I kind of go, oh yeah, it's Pride again, and then I go about my day, because as you say, I haven't been in the room where someone's gone, do you know what, you're not allowed to be you anymore, and we're going to take away your right to be you. And there's nothing you can do about it, really. So yeah, as you say, that it is a place of privilege to not be aware of a lot of what's going on, And I'm lucky. I do this podcast, Do
you know what? As a white gay man, I'm sort of at the top of the oppression Olympics, if you like. Like, I'm in the best position. Like, we tend to measure like how the LGBT community is doing based on my experience, but that means I need to use my like comfortable platform to make sure that I still go to trans pride and I still push back on things like that, because the people that don't have the same voice or platform or the same security that I get by being in the position that I'm in, they need to benefit from where I am. Otherwise, I'm just as guilty as everybody else. So I think it's really important to remember that just because my existence and the existence of other people who are like me is much better than it was, there's still loads of people within my community that's not the case for, and we need to be really conscious of not just measuring what the experience is for a white gay man, but what is it like for a black trans woman, for example, and that those two things are very far apart.
That's a great point. You're absolutely right, and that's why I think that's why I like doing this podcast, because I get to talk to people from all manner of backgrounds, and it broadens my horizons, and it keeps me aware. I'm aware. Oh shit, that is happening. I need to be involved in this and do what, as you've just said, do what I can to help change things. Yeah, I'm well aware of. It's Pride again. I'm obviously aware of why we have it, and I think there was a Pride march in, I can't remember where in Africa, but it was like in a place, and I was like, now that takes some guts.
Yeah.
Do it in a place where you're not going to get pelted with vegetables. You're going to get machine gunned into the floor.
Yeah, you're going to get killed. Yeah.
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 And I was just like, holy shit. And they were still doing it. And I saw the videos of them preparing themselves. And I was like, wow.
It takes some real guts, doesn't it?
Yeah. And it shouldn't be just because of your sexuality.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because I think it would be really easy to think, well, I live in the UK, we've got rights, things are relatively okay. I don't actually suffer that much sort of Do you know what? I'm not going to say I don't suffer any abuse, because there is some, and I think it's not the same for all gay men, for example. It's about how you present in the world, I think. So I know a lot of gay men who don't have any problem when they exist in the world at all, and then at the other end of the spectrum, I know some gay men who get quite a bit, and I think I sit somewhere in the middle. Literally just the other day I was on the tube, and at the moment my nails are painted, and I got like a sly comment from this old guy about them, and it's just a bit throwaway, but it's quite insidious over time. So it's not the same as necessarily being sort of, having a brick thrown at you or something, but just like a little niggle that comes at you and then makes you think the next time you get on the tube. So I think because that's something you can live with, it's really easy to forget that in other parts of the world, there's people who can't exist even in the level that we do. And so remembering that those people exist and what can you do to help, what can you, for example, I wouldn't go to Dubai on holiday, for example, because I don't want to be giving money to a regime that doesn't support the people that live there who are like me. It's not a big thing, but it's something that you can do to make sure that you are, doing a little bit, that you are contributing without, it taking over your entire life. You still have to live and not be like so worthy that you can't function. But I think it is just worth remembering that, in my lifetime, things were very different. I guess it's probably different if you're sort of 18, 19 now, and it's always sort of been like this, and since you were like a baby we've been able to get married and everything like that, then it's quite different. But in my lifetime, I was born in 86, so when I was a kid I still saw like the AIDS tombstone on the TV advert and things like that, so I can see the difference that's been made in the last sort of 30 odd years. So I'm still very conscious of how it could be, if that makes sense.
Makes absolute sense. Yeah. And it's funny if you're I talk about this in my act now. It's like if you're like, people talk about the changes and they're having difficulty adapting to what's going on around them, like the old guy with the looking at your nail varnish, right? Yeah. If you're open and have empathy and love for everyone around you, you can. It's really easy to accept the changes and go with it, and it enhances your life. Like I've had conversations now with men. And I've just gone, oh, your nails look amazing, and just had this whole conversation about it. And again, 20 odd years ago, I probably would have gone, okay, you're wearing. I wouldn't have flinched. I would have just gone, I would have made a bigger thing of it, because it would have been more unusual.
Because it's something different, because it's out of the ordinary, right?
Yeah, exactly. You kind of go, oh, right, and it's just because you're not aware of it. But I grew up with goths, so a lot of them had their nails painted anyway. So You know, it's
funny,
always been there.
It's about it's about conversations, and I always think it's about the humanization of people, because people are really difficult to hate up close when you actually get to know them. It's really easy to hate a group, like a homogenous group of people, whether that's trans people or gay people or immigrants or something like that. But if you actually get to know the immigrant that lives next door, or the gay person that lives on your road or something like that, it's quite difficult to hate that one person, because we're human, and that's not really built in to our sort of functionality. So if you do what you're doing and have conversations with people, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's not that scary, it's just something different. I mean, I get it. I am scared by things that I'm not used to, but in my case it's football, for example. If I'm walking down in the park and guys are playing football, my biggest fear is that the ball's going to come near me and I'm going to have to kick it back.
We all have that fear. We all have that fear.
Right? Okay, good. And that's a major panic, because it's something that's not in my everyday life, and so it's a bit, it's a bit weird to me. So I get that for the old guy on the tube, my pink sparkly nail varnish is something a bit different. What it really is that I wore it for Hoopla and I'm too lazy to take it off. Really letting the side down. Mate.
Yeah. If you'd have leaned over, it's just laziness, mate. I was off me nut and I couldn't be bothered. I'm just done with it, mate.
Something you probably could have related to.
He would have gone, oh yeah, fair play, we've all been there.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
But wouldn't it be cool as well if I'd love to see that, some fellas in their Stone Island and they're chanting, but they've got the colours of their team on their nails. That would look fucking great.
Yeah, it'd look amazing.
Just on that simple level, because I get it. I get why it used to be, but now it's like, why have we still got things that are for men and women? Do you know what I mean?
What's with the binary?
Be clothing.
Yeah.
It's just clothing. Whatever it is, you want to wear a dress or you want to wear this, and I've said this so many times on here, if you've got a piece of material and you made a blouse and a shirt, right, out of the same bit of material, you go, it's still the same thing.
Still the same thing.
Society says, that's a blouse, that's a shirt. And it just blows
crazy,
my mind.
Isn't it? It's absolutely crazy. It's I think, but it is changing, and that's great. And so some freedom to explore outside of the binary, I think, is great for everyone. And actually, I know a straight guy who he's not non-binary, but he does exist outside of the binary. So he likes to wear heels and he paints his nails occasionally, and I think that's incredibly powerful for a straight man to be doing. I find it really interesting.
Yeah. It's one of those.
When he goes to pubs, he does spend most of his time telling people that he's having to tell them that he's straight, because they're always thinking that he's gay. So there is that.
So yeah, there's still. But you know what? It's obvious if you're of a certain age, there is. You know, I grew up in the 70s and the 80s, and surrounded by very masculine men. And if you wore, I've said this before, if I walked into a pub in Maidstone only 20 years ago and I had on a polo shirt that was pink, and the amount of stick I got, I go, why are you wearing? Now they're all wearing pink, but then it was like, just pink. I really like it.
I grew up very near Maidstone, so I can guarantee that was definitely the case. That was definitely the case 20 years ago. You wouldn't wear pink at all.
No, but now to have to explain yourself that I've now got this pair of trainers that they've got sequins in the front of them, and I love them. I think they're amazing. But there's certain places I'm like, I'm not going to wear those there because I'm going to end up in a fight, and I don't want to ruin them.
It's just not worth the hassle. Do you know what? That is the decision that you make sometimes, I think. So I suppose Hoopla is a really good example. The festival is full of people wearing like loads of amazing things, sequins, lots of skin out. It's like a really big celebration of queer and LGBTQ plus culture. But I always think the problem is you've actually got to get to the festival. And so it's an incredibly safe space once you're there, but you've got to travel there. So you really want to get into it. You really want to wear something that I would term as like really gay, but it also needs to be safe enough to get you there. And I always think to myself, you kind of want it to be gay enough that you'd get like a mild hate crime. Someone would shout some abuse, but not so gay that you'd get physically attacked and you'd have to miss the festival. So it's like somewhere in between those that you want to match. And that's the level that you're sort of going for. And because you've got to travel through other parts of town, and the closer that you get to the festival, there's more of you there. So then there's a bit of security. But when you're sort of leaving your house and you're on your own and it's like 10 o'clock in the morning and you think, what am I doing? That's a deep breath moment, I think.
And it's a shame, isn't it, that it has to be that way. You can't just wear what you want, and depending on what you're wearing, depending on what. So the sort of the biker look that I've seen that was made famous with the Village People. Yeah. Now I've been around people like that, and they were terrifying. So I'm like, I wouldn't fuck with you. No. So that looks cool. Do you know what I mean? I've been in the White Swan in East London, and there was a dude in there that just like that, and he was massive. And he just walked over to me and he went, I want you. And I'm like, oh, God, I can't do anything about this. Just do it.
Whereas you were just pragmatic enough just to go along with
someone that was, wearing... I just said, okay, fine, let's just get this done. Thank you very much, mate. And, but, yeah, you wouldn't... someone dressed like that probably wouldn't get as much shit as someone with, I don't know, with wings on and whatever else they're doing. I've seen what people wear to Mighty Hoopla, and well,
you see, it comes down to how we view femininity, right? So what you're describing in terms of like,
hello.
Can you hear us? Are you all good?
Hello. Yes, I think you're back. Yeah, hello, mate.
Yeah, I was just saying it comes down to
again. My internet's being a dick.
You all sound good. It's fine.
Oh,
yeah,
right,
all
okay.
good.
Oh, wait, okay, yeah, cool. Yes, okay. Yeah, you're talking about feminine. Yes.
Yeah, it all comes down to how we view femininity, I think. So, like all the leather stuff is quite masculine and therefore is quite threatening. And we see masculine things as powerful. It's okay for a woman to wear trousers because they're a masculine thing and that's stepping up in terms of power levels. It's okay for a woman to have a short haircut because that's more masculine. That's fine in terms of power levels. But the problem comes down to when we look at femininity and the wings and the glitter and the nails and the skirts and that's all feminine. And what we generally see in society is a problem with femininity. Ultimately, homophobia, like if you drill it really far down, is essentially the same as a problem with the feminine because it's seen as, you're taking on the feminine traits as opposed to taking on the masculine traits. And so really, in my head, it comes down to that. So yeah, if you're going to dress up in, as a leather cowboy or something, that generally makes you a bit safer because it's more masculine. And it it happens within the gay community as well because the most desirable men are the uber masculine guys, and then lower down ends up being like the feminine guys, because we've all bathed in the same pool of toxic masculinity, basically, which at its very core has a problem with the feminine. So ultimately, I think it all comes down to that. So that's where the difference, I think, comes in.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. That's exactly it. And it's mind blowing that people still have an issue with it. You should be able to just wear what you want when you want. It's not affecting anybody.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think the slightly more bizarre thing is that it generally, I'm just going to talk in completely general here and about nobody specifically, but generally the straight men that have a problem with the femininity of it are supposedly attracted to women. And I just find it bizarre that you would dislike the core features of something that you're physically attracted to. I'm not quite sure how it all connects, but it must be a troubled place to be, I imagine. So I feel slightly sorry for them is what I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, I do, because they're missing out on so much. I've talked about this before. I did a podcast and I talked about an experience that I'd had with a guy, and the amount of homophobic shit that I still get it. I was on that podcast. It must have been a year ago.
Yeah,
and I still get that it still pops up notifications, and I'm still getting shit for it. And it's going, well, no, you did that with that fella. You're gay, and you go, well, I'm not gay. I had an experience with someone.
Yeah,
and as enjoyable as it wasn't really what I'm into. So
yeah, not for you.
I haven't done it since, but I'm glad I did it. It's like, yeah, but it's like you don't say. It's like when people say, "Oh, I don't want to eat certain foods," and you go, "Well, have you ever tried an oyster?" And they go, "No." You go, "Well, how do you know until you've had it?"
Yeah.
How do you know that you don't like? How do you know that you don't like Marmite until you've had it? You just got to have it, and you might not like it, but at least you tried it.
But the thing that gets me is that a year after you put that out,
we had a go. It was fun.
But it's incredible that a year after you put that out, they're still sending messages about it. Like, how can they be that bothered?
Still getting shit for it. It's amazing.
The only people that it affects are you and that guy.
They're that fucked off with it.
Yeah, so bizarre.
Yeah. And it's still, honestly, it's my own fault because I started to reply to some of them. And I was just going, look, you need to, and that's what happened. And I was just going, listen, you don't know, you weren't there. It sounds to me like you need to have an experience as well. And they were like, oh, fuck, what are you fucking saying? And it was like, go and get your dick sucked by a bloke and then come back and tell me.
Then we'll talk.
You know, just go fuck yourself. Yeah.
Do you know what?
It's one of the best blowjobs I've ever had.
Well, it's because they know how it feels. That's all I'm saying. They understand how it works. But we launched the Queer Comedy Club a couple of months ago, and the amount of online abuse when the various articles were coming out and stuff like that, if you looked on social media, which is always a mistake,
really?
But the amount of abuse that people were putting on, there was some guy threatened to burn it down, and there was all this various different stuff, and it's just, I mean, we had a policy of not replying because you can't win. There's nothing to engage in the conversation. It's not for them. So just sort of leave it. But I found it really eye-opening just how much vitriol there is just bubbling away under the surface that I think in your everyday life you're maybe not aware of. But they actually pick up their keyboards and say something about it, and you just think, what on earth? Like, how have you not got enough going on in your own life to be commenting on something that doesn't affect you? It's really weird. Oh, dude. Really weird.
Only this morning, my friend Stacey, who's one of the owners, Mark and Stacey, they own SOS Clothing, who's have sponsored this very podcast.
Yeah,
I love them dearly. They're beautiful, beautiful boys. And Stacey sent me a screenshot this morning of someone that's gone online and gone, oh, I really like your T-shirts, but now I've just seen the Pride collection and I won't be buying from you. And and Stacey just went, well, go fuck yourself. We don't want your money anyway, dickhead.
It's so strange, isn't it? Like, it's like with Bud Light
on that
in
level,
America. It's completely and utterly mad.
Yes.
I don't understand why saying we're supporting this group of people, we want to make sure that our brand is available to this group of people as well, stops it being available for this group of people over here. I don't know. How insecure in your own existence have you got to be that what's going on with other people is going to affect you? It's really odd.
Yeah. It's the fact that these people don't understand, because they all say, oh, for God's sake, I don't want this rammed down my throat. It's gay this and it's pride that, and I'm fucking sick of it. Then you're like, people are still getting thrown off buildings because of their sexuality. So until that stops happening, we're going to have to keep doing this, I'm afraid. So you're going to have to get used to it.
It's funny, isn't it? Because my Edinburgh show is called Just a Perfect Gay. So like there's literally gay in the title. I run the Queer Comedy Club, and so many people talk that they want to say to me, "Oh, but I want to hear about more than your sexuality." And my argument with that is that my comedy isn't actually about my sexuality. My comedy is about my experience in the world, and I experience the world as a gay man. And that is a fundamentally different experience to how you experience the world. And I can only tell you about my lived experience, and then we find the commonality in it, and that's where the humour is. But to try and deny and claim that I've lived the same life as you is complete madness. And so as a small child growing up, being able to see, oh, look, there's somebody out there who's so proud of being gay that they've put it on a poster that's 2 meters high in Edinburgh, or they've opened up a permanent club that talks about it and creates this space, or they're marching in a pride march because they're amongst other people where they're safe. And that if you're an 11-year-old kid who doesn't necessarily fit in with the way the world is around them, seeing that, whether it's on TV or on the internet or in the street, that's incredibly powerful. And that representation and that need to stand up and sort of be counted is really, really important. And I think it's really hard to overestimate just how vital that is. Like I say, I was at school during Section 28. I'm actually reading a book at the moment written by a teacher who was a lesbian teacher, and she taught all the way through Section 28, and it's actually an apology to LGBTQ students who were at school during that time. And it's made me realise that when I was at school, I went and came out to my maths teacher because I was convinced she was a lesbian. And her immediate reaction was, "I'm not a lesbian. I don't know why you're telling me. Don't tell me anymore." And at the time, I found it really confusing. And now reading this book, I understand that she probably was a lesbian, but she wasn't allowed to tell me for fear of losing her job. And we weren't allowed to engage in the conversation that I was desperately trying to force on her because it was the law. And because of that, I then didn't have anybody, like any representation to turn to, anybody for any guidance or anything like that. So now that we don't have rules like that in place, the ability to be more visual and to be more ramming it down people's throat, if you like, is so that 11-year-old kid can have somebody that they can go and talk to, and that they can turn on the TV and find inspiring, and understand that they're not completely on the outside, they're not completely othered, because things have changed.
Yeah. It's so right. Like I said, again, like I say, growing up in the 70s and the 80s, there must have been teachers at my school that were gay, but you never knew that. They would never be allowed to talk about it. Yeah. Never be allowed to engage if they were, because obviously they were. I was at an all-boys school, and there were clearly some lads that were gay, but could never ever admit it because they would have been just bullied into the floor. It was it was just, everybody was bullying everybody else at my school, so you had to kind of put on this front and be all tough and manly, and you know, and really you just be crying inside because you're just like, I fucking hate this.
Kids are cruel, right?
Kids are just cunts anyway.
Yeah, I don't know why anybody has them, but that's straight people for you.
Fucking straight people ruining the world with kids.
Absolutely.
But it's what's nice now is that characters in films and TV shows and things like that, who are gay, but being gay it's not like an extra thing.
Exactly.
It's just in passing, suddenly you'll go, oh, they're gay. Oh, right, okay. Yeah. It's not even a major. They don't come in. Which is
amazing, right?
Big. It's fucking brilliant. It's absolutely how it should be, and I'm so glad that it's happening now. There's been beautiful. I remember when I watched the second Knives Out with the movie with Thingy Bob, and there's a moment where they go and what's his name? The main character,
Daniel Craig.
What's his name? Daniel. So Daniel Craig's character. They got this package coming for him, and
he's in the bath, isn't he?
Hugh Grant opens the door. Yeah, and he's in the bath, and you go, oh. Yeah, that's fucking brilliant.
It's such a clever way of doing it, isn't it?
It was first class, and I got a fucking hard on. I was just happy.
Sure that's exactly what they were going for.
A metaphorical one.
No, it's amazing though, because that shows that you a gay character was able to be the main character of a story without it having, but the story isn't, like, oh, how sad it is to be gay, or oh, it's an AIDS story or something like that. But you get the colour in his life from that. What I really love now is that there's so many LGBT characters. There could always be more, ideally, but we get to see loads of different stories, because it's really easy to think that as a community we've all got the same story, but ultimately we are like millions of different people with millions of different lived experiences, all of which are incredibly fascinating and different perspectives, and that's something to be celebrated. And so getting more characters like that on the TV and in films, it just creates a much more like rich tapestry of stories and humanizes us, so that people can be pleased to see us rather than threatened by us on the tube, for example.
Yeah, but it's definitely an older generation problem. They didn't grow up with it. It was illegal. Like I've said this many times. Like my granddad was probably gay, but couldn't be, and so.
Oh really?
So it's a different world for them, and so they're still when they see a man, regardless of whether he's been too lazy or not to take it off. When they see a man on the tube with nail varnish on, they just can't. It's in there, isn't it? It's still that.
Yeah.
When, like you said, the individual. When if you were to sit down with that person, they'd be the most brilliant person you've ever spoken to.
Yeah.
And they totally get it. But in the moment, there's that. Oh shit! I don't understand that. So I need to just.
Yeah,
I need to make it.
It's something you don't understand, like you say.
Yeah.
And also, that's something they've built up. If they're in the 70s, they've had 70 years of believing a certain thing and understanding the world in a certain way. And so a change that has been gradual over the last 30 years probably feels quite sudden, at the tail end where it's accelerating. And I get it, it's tough. But there's probably loads of things in life where, like over history, where changes have happened. And I'm sure when I'm 70, there'll be loads of things that I'm like, oh, this is weird. I mean, already now I'm like, what are the kids doing? So I'm sure I'll be the same. But ideally not on like vital social issues like this, I would like to think. But I get how it comes about. And I always think it's worth... Like, it's quite a controversial thing to say, but I always think I try and approach the world by thinking that everybody is just doing the best that they can in that moment. That may not end in a good result, but with the knowledge that they've got, with the life experience that they've got, with the condition that that their brain is in, that everybody is just literally doing the best that they can. And if you approach the world like that, it just feels like a much kinder place to be, and that that feels like the world that I want to live in. So that's how I choose to look at it. That the snorting on the tube, that guy he's just doing the best he can in that moment. And as you say, maybe if we sat down and spoke and he had more time to chat and get to know me, the reaction would probably be different. So yeah.
I know my ex, when I used to live in Essex in Leon, I was living in Leon C, and my ex, very flamboyant woman, and she used to get shit all the time. So it was just because she'd wear flamboyant clothing and big hats, and she's a bigger person, and she'd get shit every day, every time she went on the train, to the point she'd stop getting the train because the amount of hassle that she'd get. And you say to people it all comes from fear and all that, but when that's just every day, and all you're trying to do is just be yourself, it's tiring. Yeah, as you said.
Yeah,
and
it's
but
amazing though, like the fact that that they knew themselves enough to know what they wanted, to know who they wanted to be, how they wanted to express themselves in the world. I always think if you're just completely conforming, I sometimes wonder that maybe you haven't spent any time sort of getting to know yourself, exploring who you are. To like, what are the chances that you really do just like this shirt and tie combo, or these shorts and t-shirt combo, or something like that the world has deemed is acceptable for a man of your age? Like, are you telling me that your brain doesn't go any further than that? Surely it's just that you haven't really thought about it. Probably you would like a Hawaiian shirt or open-toed sandals, or something a bit more different, like with the pink t-shirt, for example, in Maidstone. I think so the fact that they were in a position where they'd done that work on themselves, and they knew they wanted to be flamboyant and wear big hats and take up space in the world. That's what it's about, really, isn't it? Taking up space, and standing your ground for who you are and who you want to be.
But this is it. It was one of the things that I take away from that relationship, is that she showed me that I could be a bit more a bit more brave with my sartorial choices. So just down to wearing a hat. I wear hats now, and people feel challenged when you wear a fucking hat.
It's crazy, isn't it? It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, and they're like, "Oh, who do you think you are wearing a fucking hat?"
And do you know what that probably is that they don't feel confident enough to wear it themselves. And so it's really, you're taking up the space by doing it, and they are almost jealous that they don't feel like they can do that. It's so sad. It's really sad.
It is sad. I want to say to everybody, like, I get it. I get it quite a bit when I've had men at gigs come up to me and go, "Wow, I really like your sweatshirt," and I'm like, "Yeah, it's coral." Right, okay. Oh, I'd love to wear something like that. And you go, "Well, fucking wear it.
Do
then."
it.
Or just do it. I get really sad when I see fellas. They all wear black, navy blue, grey, or if they're feeling particularly special, they'll wear maroon. And
I've never heard maroon described as special before.
That's the level that they'll get to. That's as out there as they'll get. And you want to say to them, mate, get some yellow in your life, get some orange. Orange is my favourite colour.
Hey, orange is great, yeah. No, it's sad, but like hopefully people are starting to experiment more and just living a bit more outside of these fairly traditional setups that we seem to have constructed. So I think it's something that is changing over time, and people feel less constrained by it. I hope.
I think so. I think it is happening slowly but surely. Changes are happening. And it isn't anywhere. Yes, there's still shit going down, but it isn't anywhere near as bad as it was when I was growing up. I hope, anyway.
No, and when that's worth celebrating, right?
Yeah, at least we've come that far. It is, people are able to be a bit more open with who they are, and now we're exploring, the genders. I find that fascinating. That we're like, up until now, it's like there's just been men and women, boys and girls, and you go, oh, no, but it doesn't have to be that. And
I mean,
now I'm, it's
fascinating,
it's incredible.
Isn't it? It's gender's a really interesting topic. I could talk about it for hours and hours and hours on end. In my younger life, I think I found masculinity quite restrictive, and I found the pressure to conform to like being a man much harder work than accepting being gay. Because I think I don't think internally I ever really had a problem with being gay, but I've definitely had a problem with how I express myself as a man, because I'm relatively camp, and I'd always wanted long hair, for example, and I don't like very many masculine things. About the only masculine thing I like is cars, but I'm not into like sports or beating women or anything like that straight men get up to. So
just those two things.
Just those two things. Nothing else. That and listening to Mr. Brightside. I think all straight men seem to be into that.
That one, and was it the Fratellis?
It all sounds the same to me. It all sounds the same. It's like a colourblindness, but for music. I can't hear straight music. But so because I didn't feel like I really fit in with any of that, a lot of the work that I've done on myself in the last few years and with my therapist has really been around really trying to embrace that my version of masculinity, or whatever my gender expression is, can just be exactly what I want it to be. So today, if I want to go out with nail varnish on, I can. If I want to grow my hair long, I can. And then just dealing with the consequences of that. So I do have long hair, and it's highlighted blonde. And if you see me from behind, I quite often get misgendered as a woman, which is something that I guess it just takes some getting used to, and generally is more traumatic for the people around me than for me. In America, it happens quite a lot. Last year, I was in the US with my parents, and my mum and I were standing at a reception, and this woman head on addressed us as ladies, and then there was this sort of 3 or 4 second silence where we all sort of stood there, and I was perfectly calm, but I could tell my poor mum was quite uncomfortable with it, and the poor woman that had done it was pretty uncomfortable. But because she'd just taken, you know, she'd glanced, despite the fact I had a full beard and everything, she'd glanced and seen long blonde hair, and she'd gone, oh, this is a box for this one, and so this is two women. And I, like a few years ago, that's the sort of thing that would have bothered me, and now I'm just like, it makes no difference to me at all. I'm not, you know, I don't care at all. I'm not massively associated to any genders. It doesn't really bother me. And, you know, I'm not going to make that woman feel bad about it, so I'm not going to say anything about it. So because it just seems completely pointless and something that I'm not really like clinging that desperately onto in terms of gender anymore. So that feels like a real progress that has been able to happen in the last few years and feels pretty important, I think.
Absolutely. I think if more people were able to be more fluid with who they are, it would be such a, like you hit the nail on the head at the beginning there when you just said you found it trying to be masculine it was restricting, and it is. It stops you exploring. It stops you exploring basic things like colours, and it stops you exploring things like your sexuality and, you know,
and your emotions.
And your emotions, it's so restricting.
Yeah,
and there's mates of mine that, and I've said this before on here. There's a comedian mate of mine, Marcus Birdman, and he and I, whenever we see each other, we give each other a kiss. Hello, we go hello, mate, and we give each other a kiss, and we have a hug, and we kiss each other goodbye, and it's not even a thing. It's just something that we've always done.
Because you're two humans.
Because we're two humans, and we really love each other. We love being around each other. You know, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. But there are mates that I'm not going to leave them to kiss them goodbye.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? And I would never want to make anybody. I don't like the idea of making anybody uncomfortable because I'm comfortable being me. I wouldn't deliberately want to make anybody uncomfortable. But I would wish on people that they would have the freedom to explore fully who they are, and if they look out in the world, then they'd see that gender really is just a construct. Even in biology, the two genders don't actually exist in the way that we think that they do. Everything's much greyer than you know, we've historically always thought it to be. And the biggest thing for me is that if we could help men to be able to explore their emotions more, because there's a shame and vulnerability researcher in the US called Brené Brown. I don't know if you've ever heard of her. She's incredible, but one of the things she always says is that we make the mistake of thinking that we are intelligent beings that occasionally have emotions, but what we actually are is emotional beings that occasionally have thoughts. And when you think of us like that, and then you think that we raise our men and our boys that they're not supposed to feel their emotions, there's this whole void in their lives that it's no wonder that like masculinity is so intrinsically toxic. And so if we could actually like help them to explore that enormous part of themselves and really get into their emotions and understand who they are and why they're making the decisions they're making and who they want to be and what they want to do and how they want to experience the world, then like everything would be better because of that. Yeah.
But you're right. Yeah. And it's what's fascinating about it always, like, okay, so you need that bit and you need that bit, and those bits make another human being. After that, everything else is just what's been placed on top of that, and that we've been told. You go, right, well, because that bit does that, so that's a boy and that's a man that does this, and then that's a girl because that's where, and then this, and then you're like, no, but that's just what you've decided. Yeah, it's not, because we've decided pink is for girls and blue is for boys, and that's it, and neither the twain shall ever meet, and that's it. Exactly, and all you've got is that you need that bit and you need that bit, and those bits make more human beings, and then that's it. If we want any more of those. And then the rest of it, if you want to, if it's your choice. Exactly. But it's just, but that's it. That's the only biological bit. After that, it's just whatever society's told us. It feels like. Yeah. And once you get your head around that, you're like, oh, okay. Like you say, like I've never heard that description before of the blouse and the shirt. Like you take a piece of material and that, but that's a really great description of it. Ultimately, what's the difference between a blouse and a shirt anyway? I mean, isn't it just the way the buttons do up? They're just round the other way, aren't they? Yeah. And there might be some different kind of stitching that makes the sleeves
yeah,
puff out a little bit more, but or whatever, just it's
ridiculous.
literally down to the stitching.
It's crazy, isn't it?
That
but
makes
actually,
it different.
that's a really good, it's such a good example, because when you take it back to the material, it's the same thing. And I think that's the same with people. When you take us back to the material, we are the same thing. So it doesn't matter how we dress it up, what else we put on top of that, any of the other bits that we bolt on, they're still just people at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's just people. And if you should be able to have feelings for people rather than this, I'm a man, so I need to have feelings for a woman. It should be just a person having feelings for a person. And if we started having that, everywhere would be a lot more chilled out.
Yeah, it'd be a lot more freedom, wouldn't it?
Wouldn't it be nice just to be a bit more free?
Yeah, it would. It would be good. It would be good. And it's probably where we're working towards. So hopefully someday in the future, that's what it will be like. But conversations like this, the ability for people to have conversations is where it all starts, isn't it? And that's where the progress is made. So I think that's vitally important. And I do genuinely think comedy has a really big place in that as well, because you enable people to look at stuff and see the commonality. Like, somebody's not necessarily going to have grown up as a gay boy at school and know that exact experience, but I can tell a story about what that was like, and they can find some commonality in it, and then realize, oh look, we're all just humans. He's a normal person like me, and then you start to make those connections, and you start to see, and I think comedy is really powerful for that, because it brings people together across those divides.
Definitely, absolutely. It's one of the few mediums that brings everybody together. When you're doing a gig, and when you look out into the crowd, it's people from all areas, from all places, with all different beliefs, coming together as one and listening to whatever you're talking about. And that's why I like talking about. I've got this bit that I've got about the toilets and the gender neutral toilets, and it goes one way and then it finishes another way, and people there's a silence. There's a silence as I'm saying it, and I love it, because I know that the punchline is going to be worth the fucking silence.
The fear in the middle.
Yeah. Okay, have I misjudged the room? Here we go. Okay.
Yeah, that
Let's
roller
see where
coaster
this
is
goes
fun.
in. But it's I'm not saying that I'm using my platform, but I am definitely trying to raise a bit of awareness, or trying to explain the ludicrousness of it all. And we had Danny St James on a couple of years ago, and she was saying she goes, do you have any idea how much money it's cost me to become this person who I am, the person that I always knew? You think I'm doing all this so I can go in your fucking toilet?
it's a ludicrous notion, isn't it?
Yeah. And of course you're going to get people. There's always going to be someone somewhere that's going to ruin it for everybody. There's always, in any walk of life, there's always going to be someone somewhere that does the thing. But it's like one person, and now you're just blaming everybody, and that's what needs. Those conversations need to be had, because it's like, if you talk to someone like Danny. Danny just wants to be who Danny is, and that's what she's done. She's found who she is, and she's created it who she is, and it's a beautiful thing.
And that's the thing, right? That isn't the difference there, though, that she has had to put the work into learning who she is, and fundamentally, like the core of who she is, what her emotions are, who she wants to be, and then make that happen. And it's the people that have the issue aren't doing that work, and that really, I think, is where the divide is. That's the difference, I think.
Yeah. And there you go. There's another message for everyone. Work on yourself.
Yeah,
do some
you
work
should
on yourself.
Always be far more interested in working on yourself, I think, than in worrying about everyone else. I do think working on yourself is the most important thing, and constant work.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I say this on here all the time. Look, I get it wrong all the time. For whatever reason, I'll ask a question in a weird way, or my understanding of something won't be what it is. But to be able to, what you need to do is just have the conversation, and then to have someone go, actually, it's more like this, and you go, oh yeah, I haven't really seen it like that way before.
See, I always think there's a couple of things that are key. The first is understanding intention. So I really do think intention comes into it. So as the receiver of something that maybe has upset you or something, you do need to think about, was that actually the intention, or has there been a slip up somewhere along the line? The second is, if somebody is willing to have the conversation, then that involves a level of vulnerability that they're willing to be wrong. And if you're willing to be wrong, that's how you learn, because we're all wrong at some point. So none of us are experts. Even in the LGBTQ plus community, we're always as people, we will always be getting elements of it wrong, and there can always be improvements to be made. But you can't grow and develop as a person if you're not willing to have the conversations and be vulnerable with how painful it can be when you get something wrong. If you use the wrong pronouns, or you say something that is actually wrong, and then you understand it, that's a really uncomfortable feeling. And the growth comes from sitting with the uncomfortable feeling and being willing to do that. If you're not willing to do that and you just go, no, I'm right, that's where the problem comes in, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that it's such a, again, you've nailed it with that. Just saying, just because we're not all, we are all of us wrong at some point. We always get it, all of us do. That's such a great way of putting it, that I think a lot of people don't understand that. It's like, well, this is the right way and you're wrong because you're not saying it right, or you just like, no. Now you're just shutting the conversation down, and that person's never gonna change their viewpoint. They're just gonna they're gonna get deeper with it. They're gonna hang on to those thoughts and feelings a lot more. They're really gonna,
you do have to protect yourself. You can't always be giving all the energy to helping other people learn, but I think it's always worth bearing in mind that you will have made mistakes yourself in the past, and that, as I say, it goes hand in hand with the earlier thing that I had to say, where generous assumptions. Everybody's doing the best that they can at that moment in time. They're working with what they've got. They don't even know they are, but their intentions are good. Not necessarily that they're trying to be a good person, but the intentions are good based on the information that they've got, based on where they are in their lives, their experience, everything else. And it's only through a conversation that you can move the equipment and the knowledge and the information that they've got to another place. And I'm absolutely sure that there's things that we talk about today that we will consider differently in 20, 30 years, just like that's the case backwards. So hopefully, as my generation gets older, we will be equipped enough to have those conversations and understand, because that's basically what we're saying about older people, right? When they see somebody on the train with painted nails, or they get told that someone's pronouns are they, them instead of he, him, it's something that's harder for them to understand, because that's not how they spoke about things when they were 30 years ago. But having the conversation and helping them understand, and them being willing to be vulnerable enough to be wrong and sit with the uncomfortable feeling of it and then learn from it, that's where it comes together, and that's where you make some progress. And that's easier when you do it with real people, because people are difficult to hate up close as individual people.
Absolutely, as you said, And it's funny with the pronouns, when I was first introduced to they, them, and I got to be honest, I did say, I was like, what? That doesn't make any sense. What do you mean? Because I'm used to he, him, she, she, her, and it had to be explained to me, and I just went, oh right, and they were like, yeah, but they has been around forever. People still have always said, oh well, know what they're like, not that, they
it's
like
much more
this.
singular than you think it is,
yeah. And it was only when that was pointed out to me like that. And I went, oh yeah, that does make sense. That does make sense. Okay, yeah, fine. Okay, it wasn't like I'd gone, hang on a minute, until I understand this goes nowhere. I'd already gone like, okay, but I had to speak to someone and go, this doesn't make sense to me. Can I? What do you mean they, them? And then we had a chat, and so I mean that's it as well. Just don't be afraid to just, like you said, don't be afraid to put yourself in a vulnerable position and go, I'm really sorry, that doesn't really make sense to me. Can you explain that?
Be uncomfortable. Right. Being uncomfortable is great.
Be uncomfortable. Yeah, and you're going to do it in a way like, you'll do it like this. It will be clunky. It's not going to come out of you in a natural way. There's never a good time. Yeah. It's never the right time to have the conversation. It's going to have to just be blurted out. I mean, they go, what do you mean by that? And then they'll go, oh, it just means it. And you go, oh, right, cool. It's just, I just didn't really... It's going to be uncomfortable. Yeah. It's going to be shit. But
But do you know what?
The more,
nothing worth doing is achieved without a bit of difficulty. It is really uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
Vulnerability is the source of all creativity, and everything good comes out of being vulnerable. So if you're not willing to be vulnerable, you're going to have far bigger problems than getting people's pronouns wrong. So it's a really easy place to start. If you the pronoun conversation always makes me laugh when people get funny about it, because it doesn't affect you in the least. Nobody's saying that you have got to be called anything different. They're just saying, this is how I would like you to address me. And we're perfectly fine with people changing their names when they get married. We've been doing that for quite a long time. So it's not a hard one to start with. If you don't understand, then that's a really good one to ask, I think.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Do you sometimes have days when you're like, do you know what? I just don't want to talk about my sexuality today.
Yeah.
I just want to go about my day. Why am I having another straight dude wants to talk about sexuality? It's not my job.
Yes. Yeah. That's a really interesting question that stumped me a little, because I was not expecting that. Yes, I do have days like that.
Now and again, you're bound to just go, do you know what? Can't I just be? Can I not just be?
But do you know what?
And not have someone ask me about it. Well, there's a few elements to it. One of the elements is that I'm very grateful that we exist in a world where people feel like they can ask and talk about it. And I recognise that I am comfortable enough with my own sexuality that I'm happy to talk, and that the ability to have those conversations is something I think I can offer. But yeah, sometimes it would be nice to talk about other things, I guess. But the reality is every aspect of my life genuinely, I think, is influenced by how I interact with the world, and how I interact with the world is as a gay man. You know, if we rode the bus together, we would have different experiences of that because of how we've been brought up in the world and how we interact with it. And that influences our day-to-day lives. So even if we were to talk about that bus ride, there would be an element of me talking about it from my point of view, and even without explicitly saying it. Like, my immediate thing to think would be, right, well, when I get on a bus here in London, if I go upstairs, if there's not two routes down, like stairs at the front and stairs at the back, then I'll go back downstairs, because if I've got a problem, I want to make sure that I can get off the bus quite easily, because I have had abuse on a bus. But I imagine that's probably not something that you've thought about. And so we're not now talking about my sexuality, we're talking about riding a bus, but my sexuality impacts me riding that bus. And I suppose the real truth of the matter is, it's not actually my sexuality that impacts that. It's other people's reaction to my existence in the world is what impacts that. Yeah. But it's all bundled up together. And so every time I get on a bus, that's the thought that goes through my mind. In the same way that a woman walking home on her own late at night is going to be having thoughts about, right, where am I, what's around me, they're hyper aware, but potentially a straight man doesn't have those thoughts. These experiences that we have in the world influence us so fundamentally that the way we interact and experience the world is different, which is why I often think there's a really big argument for LGBT people playing LGBT characters on screen, because it just innately affects how you interact with the world in a way that's almost impossible to explain, but that is just there. I don't know if that's very clearly explained, but I totally understand it. And with that, it's when people go, but if you're making a movie and you want people in it that are going to sell tickets, and you want people that are going to attract people to the movie, and you go, okay, you're absolutely right, but we all know for a fact that there are gay famous actors, so why aren't we using them?
Exactly. Exactly. So and that's obviously a really complex issue, but I'm always very grateful for the opportunity to talk about it, I think, because that just means that there's somebody else out there who wants to learn and wants to understand a bit more, and I think that's great. I mean, one time I'd love to talk to a straight guy and have the conversation around the other way, and they could tell me about their life, and then maybe I'd understand it, because it's a complete mystery to me.
When you come to Straight Pride, I'll show you around. Great. I'll be
on a float.
I'll show you the Morris dancers, and we'll have a pie, and then we'll go and look at the Spitfires.
All right, you'll have to tell me what to wear though, because I'll have to go out and buy something special, I imagine. all black or something.
You have to wear. Yeah, you got to wear navy blue.
Right.
And yeah. I'll kick you out. Don't worry, you'll be fine. I'll look after you.
I'll see if I can drink beer that day.
Just beer. That's it. You're not allowed anything else.
Yeah, no cocktails. Okay, I'll see what I can do.
No cocktails, mate. Come on, mate. This has been lovely. Thank you so much for coming on. So the comedy night is when?
So we've got the Queer Comedy Club, which runs in Archway in London. It's the UK's first LGBTQ plus comedy club. So that runs Monday, Tuesday and Thursday nights with nights that we produce. And then Wednesday, Friday and Saturday nights are like work in progress shows, preview shows. But there's basically always comedy on. And it's not just queer comedians. We do have allies on as well. And yeah, so that's down in London. And then my Edinburgh show, David Ian, Just a Perfect Gay, is running at the Edinburgh Fringe 3rd to the 27th of August every day except the 14th at 9:05 in just upstairs at the Caves.
Excellent. Where can we find you on social media?
You can find me on Instagram at Mr. David Ian, and on Twitter I'm at David over there, or you can check out my website, which is davidian.co.uk.
Excellent. And I did check that out earlier, and there's a lot of information on there. It's all there. Everything you need to find out about David Ian. David, this has been lovely. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a real joy.
It's been great for me too. I really appreciate it.
This has been Insane in the Membrane. I've been Rich Wilson. This has been David Ian, and we'll see you next time.